Alright, here we go. Got another tutorial video for you. I'm going to be talking all about how I make these donut style incense holders. To be honest, I don't even burn a lot of incense, but this was a design that I came up with that could hold the stick in a way that just made sense, so it could kind of lean using that clay as a support. And I thought I'd just open it off, showing you the insides of these things and what they look like. And with that being shown, let's just get to it. So I start by centering my clay, doing some coning, bringing that clay right back down into the palm of my opposite hand. And once I get it centered, I kind of throw these the way that I would throw a plate. I use my fist and squish the clay down, compressing the bottom as I'm doing that. And I drag my fist across the clay, thinning the bottom and compressing the clay at the same time. This is basically the same way that I would throw a plate, and there's a lot of trial and error going into these. But this is the method that worked the best for me. It always helps doing that with a lot softer clay. Like, I prefer to throw plates with softer clay because to push down and compress the clay and drag your fist across it is just that much easier with something soft. And for plates, at least, I'm throwing them on a bat, so I'm not worried about taking off some soft piece of pottery and distorting the shape. So now that I have my base, the width of my base set, I am going to push in the clay and thicken up that rim for my next move. It really helps to have a thick rim because, as you'll see here, I'm kind of making a moat. I'm splitting my rim into two separate rims so I can pull up that clay and join the two, giving you the hollow center and the notorious donut. People use the donut method to throw a donut teapot or a donut vase, and I thought, why not throw a donut incense holder? So I'm just pulling up the walls here to give myself a little more height, so I have enough material to join these two together and have just a nice seam that I know will not crack. That's the main issue with these. Anytime you're making some sort of donut pottery form, you have to worry about your join and it cracking while drying or while it's in the kiln. So I'm just pinching my fingers together there until I feel the two pieces of clay join together. It's helpful to put some water on the inside of them, as if, you're creating like a little slip kind of connection that you would do with a handle, or something of that sort. Anytime you're joining clay together, you just have to worry about it wanting to separate after, so I make sure to dry these very slowly when all is said and done. So now that I have a solid seam and it feels like it's not going anywhere, I'll smooth it out with my chamois, and I'll hit it with my torch just to stiffen up the clay a little bit, because I'm just going to be sliding this straight off the wheel head and I don't want to distort the shape too much. Nice and steamy from that torch. That was no joke. So I throw a little bit of water under my pot so I can get some water actually underneath the pot where that suction, that seal between the pot and my wheel head, I had to break it, put some water underneath it, and I slide it off my wheel head, and I'll let that sit overnight, letting it get nice and leather hard until we're ready to trim. I don't do much of a trim on these. It's pretty light, but I also think it's necessary. A lot of the forms that I make are pretty flat on the bottom, and I throw the bottoms pretty thin just because I like the profile of something without a foot ring actually trimmed into it. I like it just to be nice and flat and make sure that it's level for whatever surface it'll be sitting on. So just tapping it into center, getting it into place, and I'll put some thin little lugs of clay around the sides of it to make sure that this thing is not going anywhere while I'm trimming. So now that we have our incense holder nice and secure onto the wheel head, I will just start to clean up the sides of it. Like I said earlier, this is just going to have a flat bottom. I'm not going to do any sort of fancy foot ring. I just want the shape of the outside of my pot to match the shape of the inside of my pot, remove any excess clay, and just kind of round it out to give it that nice donut looking profile when it's sitting flat on something. I always try to be a little bit more careful and let these get on the harder side of leather hard for anything that has this thin of a bottom and is this wide. While you're trimming it, your tool, the weight of your tool is going to want to push down on the base of your pot, and I don't want to cave anything in. I don't want to trim through it, so I just try to have a pretty light touch once I'm actually trimming the base of this thing. Removing some more of this clay, just really cleaning up that shape and getting it to the point that I want it to be. I'm a big fan of trimming. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the entire process with any sort of pot. It's so rewarding to finally refine your shape and get what you know is just going to be your finished product and kind of have an idea of what this thing's going to look like. So that's looking good. I'm comfortable with that. I removed enough of the clay but not too much of it. And now I'll just take my metal rib and smooth out that clay and get any grog that might have came loose while I was trimming sealed back in there. Again, once I'm using my rib on the base there, I just want to be really gentle with it, not to push in the bottom. One too many times have I pushed too hard or trimmed through a pot. It's not the biggest deal if you push too hard, because once you flip it back over, you can kind of push down and get away with it. Yeah, that thing was pretty suctioned to the wheel. Had some trouble removing it, but this is what will be the final shape. Now that it's all trimmed up, I'm using my needle tool to poke the hole for which the incense stick will actually sit. A huge benefit of throwing these as a donut and having that hollow inside is that it has something to lean on. Once that sticks in there, it can kind of rest, because since it's hollow, it'll have something to kind of catch it. This also helps a lot with glazing. In my experience, anytime I've just poked a hole into a solid piece of clay, you have to worry about that hole filling up with glaze, and then you run the risk of filling up that hole with glaze, and then your incense holder is going to be useless because it will be clogged up. So this is also a huge way to help that not happen. You can kind of glaze your pot, and then you can stick the end of your incense in there and clear out any of that glaze that might have gotten trapped. So a little bit dramatic, but using my torch to light the incense and kind of give you an idea of how it will look. You can tell how it's leaning on the clay since it is hollow on the inside. This was an idea I had. I made 40 or 50 of these for a retail client that I work with, and they wanted a way for the stick to sit but also have some play, and I thought, well, why not make them hollow? And those are my incense holders. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a try, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.